There is a moment in Homer's Iliad where the goddess Athena does something that no other deity in Greek literature does quite so strikingly. She doesn't hurl a thunderbolt. She doesn't transform anyone into an animal. She walks invisibly onto the battlefield at Troy, grabs the greatest warrior in the Greek army by the hair, and whispers in his ear. "That's it," she whispers. And Achilles, who a fraction of a second earlier had been about to draw his sword and kill the commander of the entire Greek expedition, stops, thinks, puts the sword back, makes the smarter choice. This is Athena in action. Not brute force, precision, not domination, persuasion at exactly the right moment. The gods of Olympus had every variety of power imaginable. Ares had rage, Poseidon had the ocean, Zeus had the lightning bolt that ended arguments. Athena had something rarer and, in the long run, far more dangerous. She had judgment. What's extraordinary is that this wasn't just a theological abstraction. For the ancient Greeks who built the Parthenon, who named their greatest city after her, who wove her a new robe every 4 years and carried it up the Acropolis in a procession that stopped the entire city, Athena was as real and present in daily life as any person they knew. She lived in the olive trees, in the loom, in the strategy session before battle, in the owl that crossed your path at dusk. This video is a reconstruction of what that presence actually looked like. Not the myth, the lived religion, not the symbol, the practice. Subscribe, hit the bell, leave a like before we begin, because this is the goddess who invented the civilization you're watching this in. Before you can understand Athena's role in ancient Greek life, you have to understand her birth, because no other origin story in Greek mythology is more deliberately strange, and none encodes more meaning in its strangeness. Athena, the daughter of Zeus, was produced without a mother and emerged fully grown from his forehead. The fuller version, recorded by Hesiod, is more precise. Zeus had swallowed his first wife, Metis, the goddess of wise counsel, while she was pregnant, because an oracle had told him that Metis would bear children more powerful than their father. The pregnancy continued inside Zeus himself, and when the time came, Hephaestus split Zeus's skull with a bronze axe, and Athena burst out, fully grown, fully armored, shouting a war cry that made the heavens tremble. This is a myth so peculiar that it demands explanation. Scholars have approached it from multiple directions: linguistic, anthropological, psychological, but the meaning the Greeks themselves drew from it is the most important. Athena was intelligence made literal. She was the product of pure mind, generated by the king of the gods from within his own consciousness. She had no mother's body, no childhood, no period of vulnerability or dependence. She entered existence already knowing. As her father was the most powerful and her mother the wisest among the gods, Athena was a combination of the two, a goddess in whom power and wisdom were harmoniously blended. But there is a darker reading of the birth myth that Greek scholars have noted. By swallowing Metis, Zeus absorbed feminine wisdom into himself, and the child that emerged was functionally his child alone, born from his body, carrying his values. Because of her strong allegiance to males, namely her father and most mythological heroes, Athena was always a popular deity in the patriarchal, male-dominated world of ancient Greece. This made Athena both the most powerful goddess in the Greek pantheon and the most ideologically convenient one for a society organized around male authority. She was the goddess who sided with fathers over mothers in the trial of Orestes. The goddess who helped heroes rather than questioning the values that sent them to war. The goddess whose virginity was not merely personal choice, but structural. She belonged to no man precisely because she belonged, in a sense, to all of civilization. The epithet Parthenos, virgin, is not merely an observation of Athena's virginity, but also a recognition of her role as enforcer of rules of sexual modesty and ritual mystery. She was the boundary between the controlled and the uncontrolled. And that boundary, the Greeks believed, was what civilization required to survive. Here is something that gets lost in most accounts of Greek mythology. Athena was not one goddess. She was a system, a network of overlapping identities, each with its own rituals, its own shrines, its own worshippers, its own version of divine presence, all operating simultaneously across the Greek world. Athena was known by many epithets, including Athena Polias, of the city, Athena Nike, of victory, Athena Ergain, the industrious, and Athena Promachos, who fights in front, as well as others. Each epithet was not just a poetic flourish. Each corresponded to a distinct cult practice, a distinct type of worshipper, and a distinct domain of Greek life over which Athena exercised divine superintendence. Athena Polias, of the city, was the guardian of Athens itself, housed in the Erechtheion on the Acropolis in the form of an ancient olive wood statue believed to have fallen from heaven. This was not the magnificent gold and ivory Athena Parthenos of the Parthenon. This was an older, rougher image, a xoanon, that the Athenians considered the truest, most direct embodiment of the goddess's presence. Around 1000 BCE, Athena replaced the fertility goddess worshipped at the center of the Acropolis and became the patron who gave her name to Athens. Athena Ergain, the industrious, was the patron of craftsmen, artisans, weavers, potters, and sculptors. The Athenians were the first to surname Athena Ergane, and her temple was shared by the daimon Spodion, the spirit of good men. For ordinary Athenian craftspeople who had no connection to the aristocratic world of epic heroes, Athena Ergan was the goddess of their daily work, the intelligence they brought to the loom, the kiln, the chisel. Athena was sometimes given the epithet Hippia, of the horses, referring to her invention of the bit, bridle, chariot, and wagon. She was credited with inventing the flute, the ship, the plough, and the rake. She was, in the Greek imagination, not merely the patron of existing crafts, but the divine originator of the technologies that made civilization possible. Athena was not only the patron goddess of Athens, but also of other cities including Pergamon, Argos, Sparta, Gortyn, Lindos, and Larissa. The various cults of Athena operated as branches of a pan-Hellenic network, each local, each specific, but all recognizably connected to the same divine intelligence that the Greeks placed at the foundation of everything they valued about their civilization. Athena had at least 4 completely different identities operating simultaneously: goddess of the city, of victory, of craft, of battle strategy. Which version of Athena do you find most fascinating? Drop it in the comments. I want to read your answers before we go deeper. The most important thing to understand about Athena's presence in ancient Greek life is that it was not abstract. It was not theological. It was tactile, scheduled, agricultural, and organized with the precision of a modern civic calendar. The greatest expression of Athena's presence in Athenian life was the Panathenaic festival, a celebration held every year in July for Athena's birthday, and every 4 years as the Great Panathenaea, which drew visitors from across the Greek world. Her birth and her contest with Poseidon were depicted on the pediments of the Parthenon, and the great festival of the Panathenaea was a celebration of her birthday. The festival's central ritual was the presentation of the peplos, a new robe woven specifically for Athena, depicting the Gigantomachy, the god's victory over the giants, with Athena at its center. At the Panathenaea, the cult statue of Athena was presented with a new robe specially woven by select girls and women of the city. The peplos was carried up the Acropolis on a ship mounted on wheels, the Panathenaic ship, in a procession that the entire population of Athens lined the streets to witness. The women and girls who served Athena's cult occupied positions that were, in a deeply gender-stratified society, uniquely prestigious. The high priestess of Athena was among the most prestigious positions in Athens, and the woman who held it was thought to convey to the people the will of the goddess. Her authority was so recognized that when the Persians invaded in 480 BCE, it was the high priestess of Athena who told the population to evacuate Athens, and they obeyed. Among the most mysterious ritual roles were the arephoroi, 2 young girls, aged 7 to 11, who lived on the Acropolis for a full year, serving the goddess. At the festival, these maidens performed nocturnal rites, having placed on their heads what the priestess of Athena gave them to carry. Neither the priestess who gave nor the girls who carried had any knowledge of what it was. They descended by an underground passage across the adjacent precinct of Aphrodite in the gardens. Athena's sacred olive tree on the Acropolis was not merely symbolic. It was the agricultural covenant between the goddess and her city. The olive oil produced across Attica was, economically, the foundation of Athenian wealth. Sacred olive trees, moriae, were protected by law, and cutting one down, even on your own property, was a capital offense. Athena's gift to Athens was literally the economic engine of its civilization. The ancient Greeks had two war gods, and the distinction between them was one of the most philosophically loaded choices in their entire theological system. Ares was the god of war as raw force, bloodlust, chaos, the physical destruction of battle. He was, paradoxically, one of the least respected gods in the Greek pantheon, despite commanding the most fearsome domain. Homer's Zeus famously tells Ares he is the god he most despises among all the Olympians. Athena was the goddess of war as strategy, discipline, and judgment, and she was universally revered. The Greeks regarded Athena with much higher esteem than Ares. Athena was especially worshipped in this role during the festivals of the Panathenaea and Pambaiotia, which prominently featured displays of athletic and military prowess. As the patroness of heroes and warriors, Athena was believed to favor those who used cunning and intelligence rather than brute strength. This is the theological statement at the heart of what the Greeks valued in combat and in life. Not the man who hits hardest, but the man who thinks clearest under pressure. Achilles had divine speed and invulnerability, and still needed Athena to whisper in his ear at the crucial moment. Odysseus, the thinker, had Athena as his constant companion throughout 20 years of wandering. In the Iliad, Athena was a war goddess who inspires and fights alongside the Greek heroes. Her aid is synonymous with military prowess, but her interventions are surgical, not overwhelming. She guides the spear. She adjusts the angle. She whispers the moment to strike. She is the intelligence that converts raw courage into effective action. This military theology had practical consequences for how Athenian generals thought about warfare. The Athenian strategy at the Battle of Marathon, which military historians still analyze as a masterpiece of applied tactical intelligence, stretching the battle line to prevent encirclement, then collapsing the wings, bears the fingerprints of what the Athenians called Athenian thinking, the kind of thinking they attributed to their goddess. The strategic decisions made within the Athenian assembly often reflected the wisdom attributed to Athena. Her mythological narratives were invoked to justify military strategies or political alliances, reinforcing the belief that the goddess was actively involved in the city's fate. When Athenian generals prayed to Athena before battle, they were not asking for divine intervention in any supernatural sense. They were aligning themselves with a value system, the conviction that the side that thinks more clearly, adapts more quickly, and exercises better judgment under pressure will prevail. 3,000 years before Sun Tzu became a management consultant cliché, Athens had encoded that insight into the DNA of its primary deity. Every detail of Athena's iconography, the symbols the Greeks associated with her, depicted her carrying, or described in relation to her, was a compressed argument about what the Greeks believed made civilization possible. Start with the owl. Athena's most famous animal symbol was the little owl, Athene noctua, the small, wide-eyed bird that lived on the Acropolis, and whose image appeared on the silver coins of Athens, one of the most widely circulated currencies in the ancient Mediterranean. Athena is associated with birds, particularly the owl, which became famous as the symbol of the city of Athens. The Greek phrase, taking owls to Athens, the equivalent of carrying coals to Newcastle, reflects how thoroughly identified the owl was with Athenian identity. Why the owl? The owl sees in darkness. It hunts with precision rather than strength. It moves silently and strikes exactly. For the Greeks, it was the natural world's closest approximation to what Athena represented. Intelligence that operates when everything else is blind. Then there is the aegis, the most distinctive element of Athena's battle costume. Athena was depicted as a stately woman, armed with a shield and spear, wearing a long robe, crested helm, and the aegis, a snake-trimmed cape adorned with the monstrous visage of the Gorgon Medusa. The aegis was originally Zeus's divine protection, a goatskin that produced thunder and lightning when shaken. That Athena wore it by her father's gift signals her status as his true inheritor. the divine intelligence that backed his power with judgment. The Gorgon Medusa on the Aegis is also not accidental. Medusa, according to one version of her story, had been transformed into a monster specifically in Athena's temple. And it was Athena who helped Perseus kill her by providing a mirror shield so he could look at Medusa's reflection rather than her face directly. Intelligence defeating monstrosity through indirection, through the refusal of direct confrontation, through a mirror. The olive tree, Athena's gift to Athens, encodes the same argument from an economic direction. Athena offered the olive tree, symbolizing peace and prosperity, while Poseidon provided a saltwater spring. The citizens chose Athena's gift, establishing her as the city's foremost deity. The saltwater spring, Poseidon's offer, was power, the brute resource of the sea. The olive tree was wealth that grew slowly, required patience and cultivation, and produced a product that sustained civilization. Food, light, medicine, the oil that ran the lamps of every Greek home. Athena's image appeared on coins and public seals, reinforcing her association with the city-state's identity. The Athenian democracy considered itself a direct reflection of Athena's wisdom, with leaders often invoking her guidance in political matters. The greatest physical expression of all of this was the Athena Parthenos, the 40-foot gold and ivory statue created by Phidias that stood inside the Parthenon. This colossal statue was composed of ivory and gold. It represented Athena standing erect, bearing her spear and shield. In her hand, she held an image of Nike, the goddess of victory, and at her feet lay a serpent, victory held in one hand, wisdom expressed in every surface, a serpent at her feet, the ancient, earthbound symbol of knowledge, the same creature that guarded the Acropolis and that the Greeks associated with the dangerous, chthonic depths of intelligence that Athena had tamed and claimed. 3,000 years ago, the Athenians looked at that statue and saw their own highest aspirations given divine form. We still build universities in her image. We still call knowledge enlightenment. We still put owls on library seals. The goddess of wisdom never really left. She just stopped being called by her name. 3,000 years is a long time. The Parthenon is in ruins. The gold and ivory statue is gone, melted down, probably, in late antiquity. Its exact fate, unknown. The Panathenaic procession stopped when the Christian emperor Theodosius banned pagan worship in 392 CE. But look at what survived. The owl on university seals. The figure of armed wisdom on the facades of libraries and courts of law. The word philosophy, love of wisdom. The practice that Athens gave the world and that Athena embodied. The democratic assembly, the trial by jury, the premium placed on intelligent argument over brute authority. All of it carries her fingerprints. The ancient Athenians understood something that their goddess encoded, that a civilization's longevity depends not on the size of its army, but on the quality of its judgment. That the capacity to stop, think, and choose the smarter path, even when the sword is already half drawn, is what separates a city that lasts from one that burns itself down. Athena whispered that into Achilles' ear 3,000 years ago. The Greeks were still listening when they built the Parthenon. We're still working out whether we've learned it yet. If this video made you see an ancient goddess differently, drop a like, share it with someone who loves mythology or history, and click the next video on screen, chosen specifically for people who made it all the way here.